Have you ever started Majora's Mask, played through those first 3 days, and thought, man, this is slow. I just want to get into the good stuff. Well, here's the thing. Those first 3 days are actually some of Nintendo's most important design work they have ever done. They're not just teaching you how to control Link, they're teaching you how to survive in one of the most stressful Zelda games ever made. But to really understand why Majora's Mask starts this way, we need to take a look at its older sibling, Ocarina of Time. Hey everyone, I'm Mao, and welcome to the Game Design Perspective. Make sure to subscribe and hit the like button down below as it makes the channel grow. And without any further ado, let's get back into the video and say hi to Juna. Ocarina of Time was one of the first 3D adventures ever made. And back then, 3D wasn't obvious. It was like early cinema. When people first saw a train on screen, some literally ran out of the theater because they thought it was real, and it was coming right at them. That's how new 3D was in the late 90s. Players had to learn how to exist in a 3D space with a joystick and understand movement related to the camera's position. And Kokiri Forest was Nintendo's training ground. First, you move around, run, climb, get used to the base of Link's controller. Then you find the Kokiri sword, not for combat, just for breaking pots and cutting bushes. Pretty much learn how to use it. And with that, you collect 40 rupees to buy a shield. Only when you've mastered movement and are fully equipped does the game finally introduce combat with some Deku Babas. It's a careful and gradual build. It's a tutorial disguised as a playground, and it's brilliant. It still is one of the most elegant tutorials ever made. Now, compare that to Majora's Mask. This time, Nintendo didn't need to teach players how to walk around. Ocarina of Time already trained an entire generation on that. So Majora's Mask starts in a much tighter and linear space. You're hiding on Link for only a few seconds, just enough to learn how to move, auto jump, and maybe swing your sword at some bushes, but that's just a bonus. You're not required to do that. And that's the point. This game isn't teaching you combat just yet. We'll talk about why later down in the video. Instead, the real focus is the transformation and its new ability. You fall into Termina, and suddenly you're Deku Link. The game then gives you two shortcuts. The first, a safe space to practice Deku Flowers. The second, a little test of what you've learned about them. That's it. Quick, linear, to the point. But here's a twist. The real tutorial is about to begin, and it lasts for an entire 3-day cycle. This is where a lot of players start to get frustrated. The Happy Mask salesman warns you, bring me the mask in 3 days or face a terrible fate. Naturally, you think, okay, the whole game takes place in just 3 days. But no, that's not it. The bait and switch happens here. You step into Clock Town and realize time moves way faster than you expected. Those 3 days, they fly by, which means this isn't the whole game. It is just the tutorial. And the point isn't to teach you combat, it's to teach you how to live in Termina. How do they do this? Through the power of its quests. The first 3 days in Termina feature 3 story quests. I've organized each quest to work like a modern quest tracker based on Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I even gave them some cool names, so bear with me here. I called them Help the Great Fairy, Skull Kid's Whereabouts, and a Souvenir for my wife. Let's start by breaking them down because they have very interesting lessons. Let's start with the Help the Great Fairy. This quest is given to you by Tatl as soon as you exit the clock tower. She asks you to go visit the Great Fairy at North Clocktown. So you have to explore Clocktown a bit to understand where the Great Fairy is. So the objective is an exploration kind of challenge, and it will make sense in a bit. If you want to know more about the way I'm sorting out these objectives, I suggest you watch the video on the top. You find the Great Fairy and she tells you, I've been split, please help me be complete again, find the stray fairy that I'm missing. So we have our next two objectives. Fetch the stray fairy and deliver the stray fairy. In exchange, she gives you the magic power, which allows you to perform the bubble blast. Then, she hands you your next quest, Skull Kid's Whereabouts. Now, your goal is to reach the observatory, No problem. The game guides you to it. Right outside of the fountain, there's this kid trying to blow up this balloon, but he can't do it. So you help him, and he tells you that he will grant you access to the observatory if you play hide and seek with the bombers and win, and here's the catch, win before the start of the next day. This is our new objective now. So how do you progress? Say it with me everyone, by exploring Clocktown once again, but this time under pressure because the minigame puts a timer on you. You need to win before the start of the next game. Okay, we fulfilled this objective and now we can go to the observatory. This is where the second quest is about to end. You see the moon, and remember this detail because it will be very important later down in the video. And after you take a look at the moon, you obtain the moon sphere. Now what? No one handed you another quest. This is where the level design works its magic. Let's rewind a bit to the beginning of the 3-day cycle to understand what is going on. Remember when we were told to look for the Great Fairy that we started exploring? Odds are players tried to use this Deku flower. I mean, it's almost right in front of them. It's a mechanic that was just taught to the player at this point. It's only natural that players will try to use it. But we find this dude, the business club. And this guy will hand us another quest. This one is called a Souvenir for my wife. And the challenge of this quest is very straightforward. Fetch the moon sphere and deliver the moon sphere. But we have no clue at all of where is the moon sphere. So this is the interesting part of the quest at the beginning of the game. You have two quest lines that eventually tie together. The game is showing you how the quests may work later down in the game. Quests can tie together without necessarily being part of the same quest line. So Termina has a lot of imaginary lines that connect the characters together. Throughout the years, we have grown so used to just deliver the moon sphere to this Deku's crop that we forget that it's not part of the same quest line. We were never told like, you've got the moon sphere, go deliver it to the Deku right in Clocktown. It's just the story and the level design working together. Let's talk about how the first 3 days show how quests feed the core of the story loop. So let's talk about a core Zelda story loop here. A very general one. In very broad terms, you explore, reach a new town, fulfill or solve an issue for someone, and once done, you are granted access to the dungeon in one way or another. You beat the dungeon and the loop starts over. There are exceptions where the loop may be shorter or longer, but that's it in general terms. Majora's Mask expands on the third step. When you need to solve an issue for someone, you are presented with a questline very similar to the one we just finished in Clocktown. Either you are going to the swamp or to the mountains, and Majora's Mask just taught you this entire loop in a miniature fashion throughout its entire intro sequence. You start in Hyrule exploring, you reach Clocktown, fulfill the quest line, and once done, you enter the Clock Tower. Yes, the Clock Tower is not a dungeon, but it's there symbolically as the entrance of a dungeon. So, once you're done in Clock Tower, the story loop in Majora's Mask was taught at that point. Now, one of the things that makes Majora's Mask so unique is the combination of its quest and the time system. The clock is always present and it's always ticking. It's always on your screen, making you understand that time is crucial when playing this game. Clocktown and its story quests want you to understand the time system by exploring. They make you explore through its story quests and give you enough time to see how things are tied to a timer. Because when you start exploring, finding the Great Fairy, finding the Stray Fairy, you'll notice some shops open during the day, some at night, some places are open during the morning, some at noon, some people have a routine that follows an exact time pattern, some events take place at a certain hour and only at that time. Time is precise here. And by searching for the Great Fairy Fountain or the bombers, you'll start understanding it. You're given your first quest under a time constraint by the bombers, playing hide and seek. So you understand that certain challenges are tied to the time system in one way or another. Players understanding time in Majora's Mask is crucial because Ocarina of Time's time system was not as robust. Time did not pass by in towns, dungeons, or interiors. It was far easier to understand. And it might seem obvious at first glance that, yeah, things are related to time. Duh, that's how time works in the real world. But no, it's not obvious. There are games and there's reality. And when you're playing a game, you're suspending your belief and perception of the real world. You're not thinking about the rules of the real world. They don't apply here. So games have to be very open on teaching you every rule that takes place in the game, no matter how obvious it may seem. Because Majora's Mask time system, it's not like Personas or Animal Crossing or Radiant Historia or Outer Wilds. Now let's move on a little bit from the time system and talk about why you're always at risk of failing. Think about how many games you have played that on the tutorial pop a window up and tell you if your HP falls to 0 or below, it is game over. Let that sink for a bit, because no matter how obvious it is, no matter how hardcore of a gamer you are, games will always teach you about its failure rules in one way or another. The real reason why Majora's Mask lets you go through those first 3 days almost free of combat is because they have to teach you about this game's unique failure condition. Because if there was combat and you trigger a game over, it would not have the same impact as the tutorial should have it. And they do this in 3 very interesting ways. First, every time a day begins, they let you know on which day you are. This coupled with the clock that lets you know. Second, they show you the moon. I told you this was gonna be very important. You see, the observatory is crucial to nail the mood and feel of the game. Most likely, new players have not looked up at any moment by this point and have not noticed the moon. The observatory makes you see it so that you understand the doom that is about to befall Termina. And they went so far to make the moon's face as ugly and scary as they could. My 5-year-old self was terrified by it. And third, you play through the entirety of the first 3-day cycle and are only allowed to turn back time at the very end of them. By the time you can turn back time, you are as close as possible to the moon crashing. You have a different timer on screen, and the setting and music that you're hearing lets you know that you are about to fail. The game waits almost at the very last moment so that you feel what it's like. It is the moment that has led to so many people not being able to play Majora's Mask because the game puts a lot of pressure on you with its time system. But Majora's Mask can't work without this moment. So the entire tutorial is built up just to teach you that you are always at risk of failing. Because think about it, if the game just told you, you have 3 days, and you need to turn back time at the end of them to not trigger a game over, you would not have the same sense of urgency as you should. You probably would even forget about turning back time at some point and fail, making it a very unfair situation, triggering a lot of frustration on the player. So let's start wrapping this up. I mean, it's very easy to be annoyed at the tutorial by just starting the game because, yeah, it is a slow tutorial. And by now we also understand why it is so slow. Remember I told you that the challenge type was important? Most of the challenges are based on exploration. Even the fetch and delivery challenges are somewhat based on exploration too. This doesn't mean the pacing is wrong by any means. I mean, we have to take a look at the designer's intention behind it. Majora's Mask is teaching you very complex things throughout its tutorial. It's not a cozy game. It's actually very stressful, and it's very hard as a designer to teach things under a stressful moment. And what kind of stress am I talking about? Of course, time is always running out, and it wants you to understand it without spelling it word by word. It wants you to explore it. It wants you to experience it firsthand. That's why there's little to no combat, because it would ruin the intention behind the moon crashing. Its unique failure condition. Clocktown in its first 3 days is a more complex version of Kokiri Forest, and it's teaching very complex things throughout this 3-day cycle. And also, let's remember that this tutorial was made for people who have never played the game, which means all of us at some point. This tutorial is the reason why when you're told to go to the swamp, you rush out the south exit of Clocktown, understanding what the game is all about and rushing before time runs out. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Please comment down below if you like the video, what do you think of the tutorial, if you like it, if you don't. If I'm missing something, please let me know. And also please comment if you would like to see an analysis of how Kokiri Forest works in Ocarina of Time. And without any further ado, please make sure to subscribe and hit the like button, and I'll see you guys on the next one.